Hello, welcome to Cold Book Review. I'm author and publisher Mark David Welsh, and today I'm talking about Richard Matheson's 1956 science fiction classic, The Shrinking Man. And we're also going to discuss the adaptation into one of the essential 1950s sci-fi films, The Incredible Shrinking Man. And if you enjoyed this video, please make my day by smashing that like button, or even sharing it or subscribing to the channel. In 1956, Richard Matheson was a largely unknown writer. He'd published two hard-boiled noir novels, one of which was eventually filmed in France, but that wasn't until 1974, and one short science fiction novella, which initially garnered only mixed reviews, several of them pretty negative. That work was I Am Legend, which is of course now seen as a classic and directly inspired George A. Romero's reimagination of zombies for 1968's groundbreaking Night of the Living Dead. Stephen King has also acknowledged the title, and it's been filmed 3 times, with Will Smith in 2007, Vincent Price in 1964, and most effectively in 1971 with Charlton Heston as the Omega Man. So Matheson may have been a little reluctant to pursue science fiction after this initial underwhelming response to his work, but once he'd had the idea for The Shrinking Man, how could he possibly resist? It's perfect in its simplicity and provides a broad canvas in which he can explore some interesting themes, particularly what it means to be human and our place in the universe. Like the film, the book opens with Everyman Scott Carey sunbathing on a boat, his wife below decks. A strange cloud of glittering particles engulfs him and leaves a residue over his body. But unlike the film, after that Matheson's book cuts straight to a tiny Carey trapped in the basement of his own home and running from a house spider. The story of the shrinking is told in flashbacks interspersed with more details of his struggle for survival in this strange new world where lawn chairs are the size of mountains and he sleeps under a box top at night. Now this structure is one of the 2 significant differences between the book and the film, and we'll get to the other one a little later on. Now I think this choice of a non-linear structure is understandable, and it works, because without it we will be spending the entire second half of the story in the company of just one character. I mean, there's no conversational dialogue, and there's a lot of detailed description relating to the various tasks that he tries to accomplish. For example, climbing up to the shelf where the stale bread sits that he must have in order to eat. Now, breaking these sequences up with flashbacks which show how he ended up in this predicament and feature his wife, brother and the rest of the supporting cast help round out Carey's character, give him a human face and get us fully engaged with his strange predicament. Also, being a book, Matheson can go to some places that a film of the time simply can't. In other words, sex. There's a lot here about Carey's inevitable emasculation as he shrinks. Of course, Matheson is never explicit or crude, but the issues are often front and centre. Carey obviously can no longer satisfy his wife, and her attitude towards him becomes increasingly maternal. And there's an unforgettable scene where Carey is hitchhiking home and is picked up by a pervert who mistakes the shrinking man for a young boy. It's a brief and fairly understated scene, especially given when it was written, but the impact is greater simply because of those qualities. Then there's the babysitter. In the novel, the Careys have a young daughter, and after Scott has shrunk to a few inches tall, he spies on her babysitter in secret, despite the inappropriateness of the girl's age and her unattractive physical appearance. Matheson takes this voyeurism exactly as far as it should go, and no further. But it couldn't obviously be shown in a film made in that period. But in my opinion, the book has one major flaw, and this is perhaps exaggerated by my familiarity and love of the film. For me, that movie is one of the few examples of cinema where narrative voiceover is superbly delivered and absolutely essential. It provides a window into Carey's mind as he tells his slowly unfolding story. And the book doesn't have that insight because it's told in the third person. It's a curious choice, all the more because Matheson did write in the first person from time to time, his novel Stir of Echoes being a prime example. Perhaps he felt that Carey's long dark night of the soul was not something he wanted to examine in microscopic detail. Perhaps somehow it was just too personal for him. I guess we'll never know. Moving on to the film, I've already tipped my hand and told you that it's been a favourite of mine ever since I saw it on television as a young boy. I mean, who couldn't thrill to the Inchai Carey's epic battle with the spider, or be moved by his climactic speech to the universe, which was apparently added by director Jack Arnold? Yes, watched today, a lot of the special effects don't hold up too well, particularly when actor Grant Williams has to share the frame with some giant-sized inhabitants of the normal world, such as that troublesome house cat. But other scenes in the basement with the giant props and some of the sets elsewhere are remarkably well realised. And Williams is a charismatic leading man, initially a pretty generic American stiff without a good deal of personality, but as his body shrinks, his character goes in the opposite direction and gains greater definition. At first he is filled with anger and resentment, becoming a tyrannical bully towards his long-suffering wife, but his struggles in the cellar slowly transform him into a heroic, almost mythic figure, an everyman we'd all like to be. Matheson is credited with the film's screenplay, and it is remarkably faithful to the book given the constraints of what was acceptable on the big screen at the time. However, there are rumours that another writer was brought in at one stage, specifically to turn Matheson's screenplay into a more straightforward story, because the writer was still pushing for his flashback structure. And despite the groundbreaking nature of a film like Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, which came out the year before, it was always likely that Universal executives would insist on a linear approach. And to be fair, I think this works for the film. Carey goes on a journey, both physically and mentally, and in my opinion, in a visual media, that's best conveyed in a straightforward beginning, middle and end combination. And having Williams and Arnold together on the project just makes it perfect. In short, I'd recommend both book and film, although perhaps because I've been familiar with the film for so many years, if I had to choose between the two, that's the one I'd pick, and I do prefer hearing the story in the first person. Preferring the film to the book, that's a rare one for me. But that's it for today. Well, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio!